There you go.
There we go. Okay,
Fall
we got it up
asleep.
and going. Okay. Well, a little bit of background on this, and this is an evolving topic, is, continual evolution due to advancements in information technologies requires us to adapt to it. And one of the biggest weaknesses in our overall profession is IT. Probably if you look at Biomed, when I started back 35 years ago in IT, we were probably in a parallel trajectory. We were about the same size departments in many cases, and people literally walk right past us. They've exploded, and IT has taken a life of its own around the departments. I've been part of IT departments with Biomed for probably half my career. And so security is becoming the biggest concern right now in multiple places. And many of you are familiar with some of the last viruses we've had, conflictor virus, things like that. They are literally due to the attrition of software. Software today has a defined lifespan. So we'll go through that. So kind of the disclaimer is I'm doing stuff at home. I've been doing this for 30 years, so. All right, and here's one of the favorite guys. Some of this is rocket science. Warner and Brown, if you don't know who he is, he's Huntsville, Alabama, so I kind of found that in DC. If it wasn't for these guys, there wouldn't be an Apollo. So, but very sharp man. So some things that has actually become really paramount right now is bring your own device to work is a common requirement of a lot of employees. Remote monitoring, a lot of people are familiar with this. This has exploded over the last probably 5 to 7 years. Interoperability, systems need to receive and send data, they'll be compatible on all sorts of user platforms. Device mobility, can reduce operation costs by 40%. I know this is my technicians. We're working on our new database right now. And part of the goal that I have is real-time closing of workloads. Because believe it or not, we're still paper. And I want to have the world's biggest box for that from January 1st. And so, and one of the unique things that came out of this slide, I just changed it, but I did this in about 2017, the number of 50 billion was not there. It was 1 billion devices were predicted to be, this came out of a cyber conference out of Michigan, were expected to be added by 2020. I said, just for curiosity, where did this stop? In the space of 4 short years. It went to 50 billion devices. And so, and our biggest enemy that we have for data breaches, not from the outside, it's from the inside. It's the doctor has a thumb drive. And so it's people plugging in their phones to mock devices they should not be doing. So we're talking about getting into this, because I've started this, like I said, I was on a parallel path. I have, my engineering degree now, so I have a lot of computer experience. But if you go to your staffs and internally, some of the things that you start getting into this, you need to understand what your educational background is, your employee's educational background, the experience, non-traditional staff add-ons, and one of my old places up in the Clarendale system, we were looking for a biomed. They were restructuring their IT department. They had a really sharp network engineer that was out there. And he had a Bachelor of Science, he had 2 bachelor degrees, double E's. And he said, I can finish the biomed program in less than a year. I looked at his portfolio and I said, yeah, he can do that. So I went out and looked for people that are non-traditional because it added a lot of strength to our department back there. Because the person that we had as a liaison now became our employee. And, one of the nurses used to tell me in past life, she said, one of the most common seats used to be next to me in meetings was I could translate Heath. And if you've ever had some IT people talk to a nurse, it never goes well. So current and prior experience in your staff, certification, one of the things you'll notice with IT people is they throw certifications all over the place. Microsoft has a certification for everything. And so one of the things that you begin to notice is your internal department and your credentials. I'm a big fan of the biometric credentials, first of all. But as you're going into this, simple A+ certification, some of these easy ones that show that you're reaching out to try to learn something, to try to safely go into this world. So some of the basic understanding, software, understanding what the operating system is. The antivirus, this has become a literal nightmare across the board. So understanding whether when a device is qualified by the FDA, there's usually they have software that has an antivirus on it. Our networks administer virus and antivirus software across the board. And this can really create all sorts of hardware, interface issues, network limitations, the biggest thing we still run into is a lot of our buildings and a lot of our places in this country are still way behind. These buildings were built before there's any thought of how much, we go back to 50 billion wireless devices. There used to be access point telemetry on floors. Now there's access points everywhere. So network design is a topology, basic understanding that, because that helps out a lot because we get into these IT discussions. If you can understand what they're talking about, you don't have to communicate at their level, but if you have that base understanding, that helps out immensely. Because I know one of my lives when I first became a supervisor, that was one of the things when I first went into meetings was they were so used to writing over groups like the biomeds that when all of a sudden they realized, oh, he actually can talk our language. He understands us. So, common waste exposure equipment on a network. This is a big deal. It's been going on for a long time. Medical devices with open access to the internet. We're getting better and better in that with network surveillance tools. And you'll see some of those come in. Unencrypted USB drives, no matter how hard we try to get doctors and people to, have something like an iron key, an encrypted drive, they still walk around with that same drive in their pocket and stuff it in the computer. Go ahead.
I don't know if you've experienced it yet, but lately I noticed that the surgeons have come up with new drives that are formatted in EXAC, EXAC, and of course in our older devices don't have to be FAT32. And so lately I've been troubleshooting that because they use a format, but I can't get the devices to go forward.
No, and that's like the ever changing, like they were talking about. These are because communication, the whole communication protocols, like they're getting the latest and greatest. A lot of times stuff is given to them, to use, and also they try to pick off something in our group and on our equipment. You're exactly right. Okay, we will not talk. And the problem we run into too, where this becomes a slippery slope is it's really not our device, but because it's involved in patient care, we kind of get dragged into it. And standard IP responses, look, you're trying to do something that's not approved for, that's something I hate to say it sometimes, but sometimes you have to fall back and say, look, if you want to use something, you have to use a device that has been approved by our information security department. Because the bottom line comes down to is this changes so quickly. Everyone's familiar with Moore's Law. The Moore's Law has gone, from 5-year changes in computers, 10-year changes in computers to literally, less than a year. I mean, this stuff just changes so rapidly. So, some of the things, social media. I mean, we have all our computers at work. They lock down Facebook. It's amazing how many people are on Facebook, social media, how many people get themselves in trouble because they don't realize what they're doing. What that, just taking pictures of things, posting them. And unauthorized software installations. That's like you're saying right there. Somebody will go out, hey, my friend had this, the doctor saying that, I went out and got it, I want to put it on. And you just, that, hopefully if your network surveillance, your IT department has good device surveillance, they'll catch, number one, you can't download it. that should not be allowed. And number two, if you do manage to somehow get around it, it's flat. And potentially quarantine the device because they don't know what it is. Because for every cool new piece of software that comes out, there's a whole new bunch of cool backdoors that nobody's aware of. So unsecured laptops, this has become more and more common because laptops now are functioning as medical devices. Everyone's seen probably the EKG machine that's now attached to the laptop. They still kind of give me nightmares personally because I always look at what I want this thing attached to me. And I still a little bit old. I prefer the old device, purpose-driven device. So, lapse update processes. This is something that we can really work on to get into our world. Is a lot of the users will buy the device and they don't realize that there is that lifespan. And I'm dealing with, especially medical imaging, you're dealing with a Windows 7 machine. So everybody has to be at Win 10, within like next year. You can't simply just forklift an MRI scanner and put it out the door. You're looking at, there is still a lot of XP stuff out there. And personally, I love XP. Until Microsoft killed it, basically. So some of the things to protect your equipment, this is, pretty straightforward stuff. Never share your configuration passwords with users. I can't tell you how many times this keeps happening. And this is usually the vendor being the good vendor and saying, oh, by the way, I'll give you my admin password. And so when you're logging in, it's just like we're taught in IT. Don't give your password to your best friend. Don't let them get on the computer. Ensure that the access, the people have the proper access levels. And that comes back in the password. You do not limit everything that can go outside your house. No internet app, no internet unless it's absolutely necessary for critical equipment. I'll be honest with you, some of the stuff I've done over my career is I build stuff out of third-party parts. I built ICUs out of, I made one of my private pet projects to eBay ICU. Could I get to eBay from my PC? No. I carry a separate PC that can go to the guest at work that I use for non-diabolical purposes. If I need to find something, I need to access something, I don't get this firewall that says, you're getting an auction site. So, because I found in my life in Michigan, we complained to the IT department and said, open the door and let us out. We're going to run out the field. They said, no problem. We had enough pull there. That usually doesn't happen. So the other thing is that we're going through the initiative right now is to hit the acceptable and specific exceptions. Make sure that every device you have that's medical, you've identified it on a distinct network. IT knows your IP addresses. They can identify. A lot of the tools that are coming out today, this has become a lot easier to do as the past. Locking USB ports. This is something currently we're working on at WellSet. In our biomedical group, I'm kind of in a unique situation because I am part of diagnostic radiology. So I'm at biomed is kind of my siblings. So we get on meetings, we do things together, but we're kind of we have different parents, but we're still related. We know each other very well. I started my career with engineering. So right here, I was hoping that this company is great right here in Lady, the Connectivity Center. They're one of the companies that have a whole new group of, I was hoping that it's somewhere in the mail, because I was just talking. But these guys have is the port blockers you're seeing here are nice because what you can do is you can color code them. And what we're doing at WellStar is all of our colors that are our devices are black color. And so the Biomed group is going through because they have a massive amount of stuff that they have to go through. They're going to start, we're following behind kind of one of this unique situations. They're re-inventorying their equipment, going through locking out their ports, and they're working on getting into our new database. I'm jumping into our new database, and I'm going to be doing my port stuff after that. because my devices don't move. You know, my MRIs was there last week. You know, the last thing I did is explain to the boss how I'm able to locate the MRI. I get a career changing moment. This is something used in a couple of my past lives. Laptops that walk away. You know, people, you know, the more security, nothing is perfect. This is the thing you got to realize. What you have to do is go for like the 80-20. You know, 80% of these are reasonably secure. That 20% of them, if somebody can get in that area, you can hold a bolt cutter, they're probably going to try it. You know, so things like locking laptops, you know, this right here we use when we're talking about the laptop form versus function. This is something like past lives we use. We actually use the lock boxes to keep our PCs mounted to a wall. If you're in a big city, you know, that would be Metro Detroit, Metro Atlanta, you know, depending on your hospital, some stuff never gets bothered, other stuff you have to be real attuned to what's going on in your environment because this stuff will walk away. I used to make a joke with Chattanooga that when I started here, I call the local pawn shops to go find my stuff. They all know me on a first name basis. And so it'd be like, you know, then after a while, none of that, you know, nothing ever went out. So, you know, I started there about 2001. First couple of years, yeah, something weird would show up. And I actually had a story of my older brother was about Metro Detroit, see, when it was Dynamax showed up at the garage sale for $10 and one of his interns saw it, he said, why didn't you just buy it for $10? I need $10 back. But this stuff will roll anything that can be taken out of the hospital. That's the, you know, it's vulnerable. Wild cards. Now this is something you may or not be involved in. And, you know, nurse call, smart devices, nurse call, like at Wellstar, we had a separate group that worked on the nurse call. My wife in Michigan, wildcards were part of ours because we watched them because they had fans in them. It was one of those weird situations, and we did some of that in one of my other labs because it's just one of those weird hybrid devices because there's an electrical component in it that the IT group just, for whatever reason, want to call it. They just don't want to breach out. They don't want to break out your computer. If it's a Microsoft application, they can put something in it, cool. They replace a hard drive, cool. They replace a drive, you know, anything, keyboard, cool. As soon as you say you got to fix a power supply on a wild card, it's out to lunch. I know in my last life in Michigan, we actually, our group was the one, Biomedical was the one who did the overall evaluation. We were one of the key people who evaluated all the wild cards. Because we actually did have one more that fired one of our areas. So we said, you guys tend to be tuned to all this stuff a lot better than our IT division. And I'll be honest, if you walk through your hospitals, look at the fans of these things. So a lot of them have fans, you see dust bunnies blowing out. Smart beds, I've had a lot of people actually explore our profession because a lot of the smart beds, people are putting them more under contract because the skill set of the facilities people who normally maintain them, they just, you know, let's say going to knowing the limitations, the facilities directors know we don't have the people that can do this. My favorite thing here is my connection to PACS, which is my current life. So my group used to be, before I started there, I kind of made the joke, it was PACS was in my office. PACS moved into the 9th floor of the IT building where I was, and I moved out there and took over as the manager. My manager retired of IT, now I'm not medical and services. So we kind of traded each other, but we worked very, very closely together. And, that group was actually pretty excited to have me come in because I understood everything. When you're talking about PACS, you begin talking a whole different language. I mentioned IP addresses. I'm going to mention another great thing that makes no sense to anybody is AE titles, which is basically how everything routes and paths. And one of the problems we had is when I first started in Wellstar, we did a major PACS upgrade. And part of our weakness of our database was they were trying to map, you know, they were looking at the network. They see the IP address, they see the AE title, that's all they see. They come back to me and say, hey Greg, we're trying to figure out the, what devices, AE title, whatever. I look at my database, and I'm pretty primitive. I go, I have absolutely no idea. But if you get me the building, get me the, I can start trying to narrow it down. But that, now we are revenue. So, and that's, there's a couple of issues around it. Understanding your internal boundaries. What can you and can't you do? And, because one of the things is being, I was been fortunate in my profession because I tried to build relationships with people. So, a lot of what I've started to take over is like the information security needs from my boss. My VP doesn't have to tend to. And it was refreshing to her, that all of a sudden, here, you've got all this covered. My executive director, she's on a lot of it still, but they put all that back to me. So I've got a real good relationship, and also I came from the IT division. So I knew a lot of those people, like I said, the night foreman that joke we traded. A lot of those people, I was 26 floors of IT people in one round. So I had them on. So what are your limitations to get your assets into the IT department? Part of it is you're trying to do business and go back and have certifications and credentials. The more comfortable they feel with you, and the more that they, as they start feeling out to you and you start reaching out to them, you will start getting those relationships built. And so some people are third-party IT providers, you're going to have an uphill battle. So, like another thing is who pulls your cables. Like a lot of the installs I've done through my career, I will be honest, I'm a little kind of obsessive compulsive about the way my stuff ships. I want to be able to, I came from the technician ranks. I want to be able to walk in a room, look at the port on the wall, go in my room, and I know exactly what that is, where it is, and I know how to cross that. I don't want to go see something coming up. So, who assigns and controls your IP addresses? Because anytime a device comes in, somebody on the IT team, especially when you know that's something that we've been working on in our processes. About making sure our relationship with IT is stronger and stronger and stronger. We are, like I said, we're looking more of that collaborative. So how do you get stuff in? One of the problems is getting into the meetings. Like just you have to put, I say you got to get this. If you show up for Thanksgiving dinner, you hope that somebody left you a chair. If somebody didn't leave you a chair, like in the case of a lot of these projects, I think you have to kind of subtly make your way in there to be brought into it. Allow to be there. So who do, how often, this has always been a big problem in our profession, who determines the priority of the request? IT priorities are compared to Biomed, ITR priorities are like night and day. I have a new initiative going on with another one with a vendor. We said we need something simple as access to the Wellstar guest network. So we put in a ticket about 2 weeks ago. We're on a slow boat to China. So we will get it. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. And that also loops back to that bring your own device, because part of their initiative was they would take and you could scan a QR code, just as we did here, and you can initiate a service call. Beautiful concept, great on, sounds great on paper until you explain it to a user that, oh, by the way, that phone that's your phone, they're looking at an initiative to use your phone to scan a QR code to make a service call to email you back to your phone. And the first, reply I got back from everyone was like, what? So building the lead time for interfaces. This is a big thing when you're ordering practices. I've been in this for a long time. We can inventory stuff, but simple building of the interfaces to a practice to bring a practice on board. We can inventory a place, we can determine if the equipment's any good in a matter of days. It takes weeks, sometimes months to for building different interfaces for devices, practices. Heaven forbid none of your equipment matches, which has been a common thing I have. a lot of Philips stuff, but I have also Siemens stuff, I have GE stuff, I have Sheila stuff. And it just kind of comes with the territory. And also the other thing is who is, this is something I've been working on this, is who creates all your, you know, like the IT budgets, even your budget. Like, you know, when you're looking at projects, if you're not there, who's making the assumption for you? And that can be very detrimental, and that can be real loss. I'm going to do a quick time check here. 4:30, okay. So, ensure all the compliance documents, security, you know, whatever your process for securing any of your licenses, heaven forbid, don't lose your licenses for any license. Also, any software licenses, I know some horror stories where people have lost their license with central stations, and this is not a cheap thing, especially when you go for training. You know, storage areas, you need to make it so it's limited access. Ideally, it's locked. You know, if it's something that's simple, it's locked in. Like in our world right now, I'm very fortunate because I basically work at a cancer center in the basement, and we're transparent to traffic, throughput traffic. So we can lock anything that we have up. And once 6 o'clock hits, that whole building shuts down, especially with COVID now. I can't even walk back in the building at 6 o'clock without going back through the temperature check for the hospital. And then trailing myself all the way through the tunnels to get to my place. So, you know, documentation, this goes back to as I was talking about the database we're working on. You need to have everything, software editions, IP addresses, antivirus, anything that's being informed on these devices, especially when it comes down to, you know, budgeting. And that's one of the things that we've been working on diligent now, is becoming an asset to our capital plan. Because the main capital planner used to be my financial person. I started there. I said, I promised her, I said, when I get my database online, I will be the asset that you will be able to look at and find anything. If somebody says, well, you have 417, I'll be able to tell you where it's at, and it'll matter a few keystrokes. Document as many network relationships as possible. Hardware credit, the biggest thing is always make sure if it didn't go in writing, so you can't tell my Texas work orders, it didn't get documented, it didn't have operating system software. Who supplies what in writing? I made a lot of my career of actually third-party sourcing stuff. These are OEM alternatives. I know back in my first cycle at the University of Michigan, we took all the displays off of GE. And we went out and I went out to MDM and bought displays for over 8,000 back in the day for $150 a piece versus $2,000 a piece. And so it saved a lot of money. It's back in the days of CRTs. You know, they all went the way of the dodo, but you know, that was a lot of money to buy a lot of stuff. So mixing and matching stuff. I made a joke about the eBay ICU. When I built that ICU, I bought it from 5 vendors. And I kind of, my financial person, I said, do you want to know how I'm going to do this? And he said, can you do it? I said, yeah. He goes, I don't want to know. Yeah, just you go. So, you know, can identical components be purchased through hospital sources versus the vendor? Examples, printers. You know, I mean, an HP printer usually, unless they put some sort of special network card in it, you can buy it commercially. Security, HIPAA, ours, favorite thing. Will there be any interfaces to medical records? Patient data, unique identifier. We're going back to my most dreaded thing I have right now is calls that I can't find my work list on my CT scanner, which is something that we unfortunately have to pass through because it becomes a vendor to our tax person to our IT division. Because there's not a lot we can do because it's not a hard down arm. So we need a lot more of our resources. Remote access for physicians. We actually set up in one area of my shop, basically all the radiologists, they configure all their computers for the remote access to home, and they send them out to install them at each of their, wherever it is, at their office or their home or whatever. Up until COVID happened, that was a commonplace in my conference room. So what's the hospital policy for remote access? No problem, just put it on the network. And we check with IT. You know, that's something that's done through my career. Okay, in-house testing. You know, one of the things that I've been in this for a long time is we've managed to buy a lot of test equipment in my different lives. You know, some of the things that I did in my first life was I developed an area where I could actually monitor all my patient monitors in my shop. So I was in charge of all the ICUs at the University of Michigan. So I could see any device anywhere. Nurses would call me up and say, Greg, I need to pull up children's ICU bed for potting anymore. Because they've got the one for my ICU, pot ABC, which is really sensitive. You know, I always get a secure location so nobody can see patient data. So nobody can just walk in the door and see what you're looking at. You know, security copies of software, I can't harp on this enough, establishing that, you know, you have to budget and you have to figure out how to pay for this. You know, when you're doing this stuff, the components are, they're very good at salvaging to my client. And so a lot of the stuff that I built, like for network, you know, my testing areas, was stuff that I managed to either get through a project or I managed to salvage some of my switches right out of the gutting another system. You know, can we have a switch? Sure, we don't care. And what I have done to make, you know, one of the things I have in my role now is I have a training room for all the nurses. So my best friends are when the nurses come in, you know, pre-COVID, 2 days, you know, probably 2 days a week, they would come in. We have an IT area for training. You guys are welcome. We love it. Make sure we have water, we have coffee. You know, so because why is it? What's your best friend? And you know, who's going to advocate for your department? You know, that nurse that you trained as a new nurse, and she remembers when she came in as a green nurse. I can tell you, I look at the University of Michigan hierarchy today, and I remember some of these people when I started in 1995, and they're like, you know, the top VP, and that person that you were nice to in those days, you built that relationship, they remember those relationships. This is one-on-one life I had. This is just an example. We had the patient monitors in here. We were tapping into our network. We were using a surveillance tool called Solar Winds. And that was one of the things that my guys originally weren't happy about because I ended up buying a telemetry budget and IT wanted it. And I said, this is, you know, be cool, right? You know, these guys will get fed up because they don't want to mess with our stuff. And they're going to give this back to us. But you just have to be patient. And eventually they will. So that's just one example of, I've had several of these over my career. But the difference between an opportunity that, you know, you have to take carefully. I mentioned those smart beds. You know, that sounds like a great opportunity. If you inherit downloading the data out of the beds, you're also going to inherit changing the wheels on the beds. You're going to inherit the rust on the beds. So supporting devices which are not directly, I made a rule, actually when I moved down to the south the first time, my group used to fix fax machines. I said, if you want me to come down to the south, you know, from Chattanooga, I will not fix a fax machine. Period. What part of a fax machine attaches to a patient? It doesn't. So, you know, that was one of the things I did not want to get into. And when our IT division took it, we would have to buy parts to fix them. The IT division, as soon as I kicked them out, by the time I got to Chattanooga, there were 2 pallets of fax machines in the storeroom. They just swapped them and threw them away. We were never, you know, my old group wasn't allowed to do that. So if you go into a role, you have to be careful about it. If you do it without funding, if you've got a little bandwidth to do an experiment, to try to support something and build, you know, a pro forma that says, I need a technician. You know, but if you get assume something with no plan for funding, you will bury yourself. You know, working as a system administrator. I can't tell you the amount of times that, you know, we've started to move into areas when they all of a sudden said, you guys are best to start setting up the user accounts for the nurses. It's like, no, you know, that's plain and simple. There should always be that division because also too, we're getting, you know, nurses changing jobs like, I don't know, don't even have a good analogy. They're swapping over so fast that you couldn't even keep up to date with your nurses, taking support outside your skill set. If you don't have a skill set to do it, don't do it. So the old adage of, you can change your oil on your car, great. If you don't know how to change your motor, don't try it. Good opportunities. I mentioned solar winds. Solar winds was a big win for us years ago. In my current life, we're dealing with a new thing called Zingbox, which takes solar winds, and it's a whole another animal. We're in the infancy of that right now. And so that basically helps us monitor itself. The beauty of this thing is it can tell me how the actual usage when my X-ray rooms are transmitted. And so we can start looking at this and say, what sites of ours are we really using our devices at? You know, where can we shift patients? Like I said, we have 11 hospitals, 26 imaging sites. Is there potential to start, you know, within reason, there's some of our sites that are pretty big. They're only 3 miles down the road from each other on like a contained highway. So it's a matter of a 4 or 5 minute trip. Some people back and forth. Brainscape was a fantastic opportunity I got for the doctor, actually an Erlanger called Dr. Depp. He's one of the smartest gentlemen I've ever met. He was an electrical engineer who one day woke up and, you know, his words not mine, said, I want to be the world's greatest neurosurgeon. This dude is and still is one of the sharpest men I've ever met. But Brainscape looked like it's like a wild card. And one of the catches was when they came in, he said, I'm worried about this thing leaving, getting stolen, whatever, something happening to it. And I said, I'll tell you what, I will take this thing and I will have it in my office from when we go live. It came out of Israel. And I will be, literally, it will be right here. I'm sitting here, it's right here. So we built that relationship with him, and I had that relationship for a lot of years. And it was a really great relationship. He did stuff for me even in the biomed world because he loved that we are interested in learning. So pre-planning, let me just do my concept here so I don't keep you guys out of the. We're at 4:30. Okay. What staff members and departments need to be involved? Like in my current life here, I said, if nobody's sat a spot for you at the dinner table, it takes a little time to get. And so people need to realize too, like in my current role, I'm all around Metro Atlanta. I've got 11 sites, 11 hospitals to get to when they're doing projects. So they've been working with me, especially with COVID now, more and more of the Teams meetings, things like that, where you have to physically drive. In Metro Atlanta traffic, if you've ever experienced that pre-COVID, it is a nightmare. You know, 3 miles is my wife made a joke. I drive 85 miles to work every day. I had less commute time during pre-COVID days than some of my coworkers who live 15 miles away because they live in the wrong direction. And so getting around, you know, with staff members, departments, you know, who sponsors something, because that's something else you have to watch. I'm very fortunate in my current life. My VP's a very sharp lady, you know, so that's taking a lot of that work. She's got a lot of focus on things like that. Where's the location? One of the things I have been dealing with though is I'm a big fan of UPSs. I just don't like my stuff dying for no reason. And if you haven't been, like if you look at a UPS from a dollar standpoint, it's hard to justify it. But when you start putting it to the equation of, we had this recent hurricane that came through Atlanta and I blew out whole hospitals. And we were down for 2 days without power. You know, we had major issues in some of our centers. You know, the UPS could have saved some of our equipment because we lost the feed lines to whole cities. And, you know, our Albany area of Atlanta, basically the whole area was flat. So documentation of floor plans, this is something that's actually been a little bit of a challenge. Because when we started moving to a new evidence, which is called Novo, which is part of ServiceNow, they have this belief that all of us have wonderful maps of every place we work. And that doesn't happen. And they came to that realization over time. You know, we don't, like I made a joke of one of my laptops I have upstairs for work laptop. They said, we know exactly where it's at. And I did a query on that. I said, I went down because I was part of IT and I said, hey guys, where's my laptop? And I said, I live in cubicle 955. They said, oh, you live in the 1800 building. So I went back upstairs and their granulation was, everybody has a floor plan. If this computer right here is yours, it's in your office all the time. No, it's not. I close it up and I'm 40 miles away. So, you know, that's some of the things that getting the proper board, you just can't change blueprints and floor plans even for numbering. There's so many places that rely. fire department, building inspector. You know, I've had people go, we'll just we'll wayfind our whole building. It's like, you go, you know, you have to deal with all those entities because you just can't change stuff. And a new building is great. Define the expectations of your role and your role of your department. Make sure that, like I said, you do not want to be the nursing administrator. What's the purpose of the equipment being replaced? Make sure that you're trying to match like for like. And we have a lot of things like that now. I had somebody that distributed some COVID equipment. They were budgeting for some new ultrasounds. Said, hey, one of my sites said, I need 9. They looked at it and said, no, you don't, you need 8. Because one of those is a COVID ultrasound that I've refurbished and I sent to you guys. It's located in the ICU, so you don't need, you know, you have to replace like for like. You know, clinical staff, I can't tell you the amount of times, you know, like at McLaren, they made a decision on a whole new patient monitors for the whole health system. And part of it was they were supposed to come in and meet with all the nurses at each site. And when the nurses realized that the decision was made from a financial standpoint, they got blown off, it went over like a lead rock. They were upset. This happens a lot, but sometimes there's a reason why they do it. And in their case, it's financial. You know, they needed the biggest bang for buck for the amount of money they did. And so that was, you know, that was one of the struggles. And a lot of hospitals, even in my world, I have a couple hospitals, inner city hospitals, trauma centers, they don't make money. If you've ever worked in level 1 trauma, that is about the world's biggest losing battle because you constantly are in the hole. So how critical is equipment to daily operation? You know, as we talked about devices, you know, Amy's talked about them, the clinicians talked about them, you know, business critical. I lose an MRI in the area. I had an unfortunate incident where I lost an MRI for over a week and a half. It was one of the most bizarre problems that ever happened. It was a manufactured defect that had happened 10 years before with a subtle crack. And they had completely dismantled this MRI to find. They had brought in Phillips guys from all over the country and they could not figure out what happened. And they showed me pictures of it and I said, you know, this was just such a subtle casting flaw that just manifested over time and they'd never seen it before. So how bad did that hurt that imaging center? Big time. That was our only MRI in one area. So everybody had moved around. So that was pretty business critical. You know, long-term support issues, data storage needs. And one of my lives, you know, that was people discouraged us from allowing us to keep data. You know, we had another initiative for patient monitoring. We could keep B2B resolution of the patient, basically the demographics, heart rate, your blood pressures, your temperatures, all that stuff. So there is some valid need to that, but you have to determine how long you want to keep it for, and who do you need it on, especially. As a system administrator, you just been determined. You keep harping on this because you will get there. People, there's good times to be into that, and bad times you don't want to be anywhere near it. There's no such thing as a free coffee. I have been taught so much by this that by simply taking a weekend off, I've had people grab a network cabinet for me as a favor and said, hey, this is the perfect one for you. But then they forgot that it didn't have wheels on it. So they used it, installed it, and said, oh, you guys moved stuff. Yeah, we did. We have to move it out. So, you know, make sure the current technology is current. When I built those ICUs, you know, or any of those third-party systems I built, everything was compatible. It had lifespan that matched the sibling equipment that it was designed for. So if the ICU over here was set to go in 3 years, this new one I put in could easily make it 3 years or longer. Ideally, it made it longer. Actually, it was supposed to last 24 months and it lasted 6 years. And so, locked for free, locked over equipment. Like I said, there's some good stuff I keep around. And that's kind of made the joke with the ultrasound. I had a bunch of ultrasounds that were retired in perfect condition pre-COVID. I said, I think I can, because I had a lot of exposure to a new bunch of hospitals that we bought. about a tenant corporation. And so I think we can use some of these ultrasounds at some of these hospitals, so I'm just gonna sit on it. You know, and let the next PM happen to them. And lo and behold, you know, the floor broke loose of COVID, and they said, do you guys have anything you can dedicate, you know, as I call it, it's our sacrificial lambs. These ultrasounds went into COVID units. If they don't come out, they're already depreciated. My prior person who was had this position, he wanted nothing in his shop, nothing stored at all. So I want to keep these because I know when I went to those inner city hospitals, I knew I looked at their ultrasounds and they were really bad. So this thing was a 2-generation upgrade, even though it was a downgrade for our mothership at Keystone. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, always think about what you're doing. Just because I had a bad problem with the telemetry system, health system, my director asked, can we reuse the wiring for the telemetry system? It's 3 different companies. They said, well, you can, but we don't recommend. We really don't recommend it. So when I came to Biomedical, when I came back, and I had a lot of experience with telemetry on my 40th birthday, I had a massive collapse in my telemetry system. But we were already budgeting because we knew this thing was on a slippery slope. And when I went into the wiring, I looked at this and I said, oh my God, you know, this thing, I said, what kind of telemetry was this? It was beyond coding. It was another vendor. And unfortunately, none of it was, the antenna system was GE, or it was actually Vitalcom at the time. So things like that can really come back to bite you in a bad way. You go on divert, you have everybody, including the CEO, breathing down your shoulder going, why am I diverting for telemetry? Oh, because 5 years ago, 8 years ago, you made that, you know, you made the decision you thought was smart, and there isn't a way around it. So involvement in the budget process, you know, defining all your components, software licensing, you know, data conversion. I'll do another check here. 10 minutes left. Okay, installation requirements. Read all your requirements. Read your specs. And we're vendor remote access and dealing with this now with helium tracking on my RNRIs. Because if people are supposed to manually call it in, sometimes it doesn't help. Sometimes the results are pretty bad when the MRI goes wrong helium. You know, the operating system, Ken mentioned that. You will still find people over the years who will be selling Win 7 devices, even though right now they're selling them current. And they know Win 10, you know, Win 7 is basically going to go out of support here in the eminent future, not somewhere down the road. You know, future plans, how do you keep this thing, you know, how long do you plan to use it? Any plans to keep the future upgrades to DLS ever call? You know, antivirus, you know, I keep harping on that one. You know, one thing, you know, Cat, I would agree to keep it current. I'm remediating something with all my mammography list, to try to get in English, to get everybody forklifted at the same time, at the same software level, so that way when we're starting to work on these, you know, we're going through contracts, we all of a sudden don't have one of our sites goes like, hey, guess what, that system just went down, and you can, in our world of Wellstar, we do a lot of cancers. And so mammography, stuff like that, and women's health is a big part of our business. And that really does hurt frequently. If you have a system that just goes down, and you have to buy a new one. You know, software conflicts, annual support costs. How many people make sure they put that into their budgets? All of my stuff, I have no money. Everything goes back out to the users. You know, so they have to budget. There's a software maintenance agreement or something like that. I may have, well, I shouldn't say that. Like with some of my stuff, it does come back to me because it makes more sense that I monitor that certain system. But if it's a localized system, like a one-off Toshiba, you know, scanner or something, that department gets the budget for it. I do the contracts, I write the contracts, but they have to make sure that they're feeling the pain in their wallet for supporting this. License costs, you know, for expansions. This is just some of the tools I've had over the years. You know, this is like a moving target. You know, some of the analyzers, just to get into this. My first analyzer I got in my college, which was present at the University of Michigan, was $36,500. That was to do my telemetry system, because I said it was part of the program. When I did it, I want every piece of test equipment that GE has. And I made them give me a detailed list, and that was in the pro forma. So as soon as that system went live, I went out and bought every single piece. So I had there, and I was very fortunate, because I moved on to life, getting $36,500 out of anybody. It's like, it's like pulling teeth out of a chicken. It's not going to happen. This is one of the fun things, the site surveys. This goes back to one of my lives. What we have here, we're looking at, is this is, we had a place downtown, and we said, it's like a rehab area. What you have looking over here is you have a whole bunch of little humps in your frequency range. What are those? It's the haunted house. It's the wireless for the movie theater. And so something as simple as, hey, this is no big deal. We're just going to hook this system up, and away it goes. Now, have any of you been around long enough to remember the incident at Baylor where the TV system knocked out Baylor's clock? Now, one person remembers that. That was back in the days. That was a shocker around the world about paying attention to whose frequencies are around. Because as soon as the TV system went on digital, it blew out Baylor. So I'm sure all your documentation is the latest version. This is something we're working on. There is a new company out there, One Source Documents, that they're really good, because what they do is anybody who has a manual, and this has been a problem with vendors, is they have manuals. They have any, basically public access documents, and even the vendors know this now. If you have X device revision A manual, they keep it on their web, for everybody to access. If I go to school and it's my proprietary manual, then it's on my private site. But if, like, let's say I get the version C of that one manual, they'll take it out and they'll say, hey guys, we got the new version of this manual. So you don't have to keep, in the imaging world, I can't imagine how many manuals I'd have to keep in my area. It would literally be, look like a public library. Make sure each person has the power to make decisions. Look, this is one of my fun things. This is the eBay ICD back in the day. So some of the things what this one was, over to the left of that screen, is there was a redundant monitoring system. And what happened was this was designed to detect different sides of the building for different switches. So if we had a catastrophic failure in a room, then what happened in one of our network rooms, all you had to do was walk to each of these areas, flip the literally patch cable over, and you were back online. Because you could go, and I actually had that happen one time. A power cable got kicked out of one of our switches, and all of a sudden I got a call. I was in there at night, and I'm still a functional person, technician-wise, and I got one monitor down, two monitors down, three monitors down. I said, we lost a switch. The first thing I did was identify for all these ICUs, switch to the backup network. You got everybody back on their CICs. And we went out and found what the problem was. But to the patients and the nurses, it was pretty transparent, because we're right there. Now, this does take a lot of money. It takes a lot of selling to your administration to be redundant. Now, this is what I call beauty of the beast. The guy on the right is the IP network. The guy on the left is one of mine. And I started this with the University of Michigan. We just did simple cables. All the cables came through my certain color came through me. If I actually found a cable that was being used in the network, because I occasionally go out and actually use that look for them, I flag them and I call IT and I say, you got 24 hours to get down here and get this cable out of here, or give me a new one and I'll swap it in, or I'm just going to take it and walk away with it. Because it had to be that type of, there is a penalty. Why is that? Because when that monitor network went down, I know the port is labeled there. I know the port is labeled there. In a matter of minutes, I'm back and running. I've troubleshot it. I still to this date don't know how these guys done it. You know, and this is common even today. So they're going to see much better. This is the patch panel details. Like I said, if you're in the technical world for a while, that's a dream to work on. This was something interesting. They're putting a telemetry network when they were reading floor plans. It's no big deal. Just go right across here and everything's good. So I just block the things for fun. This is the umbilical cords that went from one building to another building. And we had a lot of these, oh darn moments, because it was like, we have to go through here. Can we use another path? No. And what happens when you get stuff in here is you do have vulnerabilities. If somebody comes in here and wins one of your tables or something, especially on the higher end telemetry stuff, this isn't as simple as just unplugging it. It's an endeavor splicing some of the larger network cables. This is one of my favorite ones right here. I was in one night and same telemetry project. They said, we need to do some core drilling. I went to our facility people and said, these guys need some cores. And they said, you're not going to drill any cores, Greg. I said, no, you don't understand. They need the cores. I don't drill cores. That's not my job. I have no idea how to punch a hole through the floor. I don't even want to get into that. So what happened was one night, I got a call in my office that all the communications went down to the 9th floor, the 8th floor. And so it kept going down. And I went, what the hell? You know, what's going on here? Because we lost all, like, oh, it wasn't patient monitoring, but it's all like the phone systems, all certain different communication systems went down. So lo and behold, you're supposed to be testing before you drill holes. And it's like the measure twice, cut once. Well, these guys are still to this day are my bookmarks. You know, basically, you know, with those where I said, when I came in the next morning and found those, I said, I wonder if these guys are crazy enough to just leave these here. And so those are the conduits that held the communications to our patient floors. And so, yeah, it's like, you know, one of those moments where the first thing that came to us and said, look, we needed the hole. You guys contracted somebody to drill the holes. We just told you where we needed them. And I said, it's me proud, but it was a really bad night for our IT group having to catch those cases. Well, thanks everyone for attending. This can go, I can actually keep this, you know, presentation if I waited out probably another couple hours. But do you guys have any questions at all on this? So hopefully you learned something from it. There's going to be a lot more coming as we start getting our Zingbot stuff coming. So that's looking forward to that. All right. Well, thank you much. And it looks like perfect timing to make it down to the reception. Thanks again.